Simpson, Senior Content Editor of Collaborator.com. Welcome to Short on Shorts, our review show focusing exclusively on short-form content. I'm here with my co-hosts, screenwriter-producer Kevin Allen Jackson, costume designer Maria Perry, and screenwriter and former Disney fellow Phinny Kiyomura. Let's dive right into our first film. Question for God, written and directed by Tadas Vidmantas. It's a Lithuanian director out of London. It's starring Tunji Filana and Richard Cotton as God. It's produced by Sleep Thinker, which I believe is Vidmantas' personal production company. It's a super short about what happens when a man finds a God's number in the bathroom of a pub. So, Maria, this was your pick. Tell us why you chose this movie.
Well, obviously, I've been combing through YouTube looking for shorts to review, and I remembered having seen some other stuff that Vidmantas had done, so I went to see if he had done anything new, and this popped up, and it was wonderful and very short and sweet. And I just love that it has a punchline, but it leads up to it, and it feels whole, and it feels funny, and it feels like, just fun. But it also has a really cute twist ending that made me giggle and share it with my sister, so I knew it was the one I needed to submit for this.
Yeah, it's a bite-size film, a one-punchline movie, which I kind of like the narrow focus of a short film. I think it's good to have a single punchline in a short movie. What did you think, Phinny?
I think so too. I mean, I like anything that's a joke that you sort of I don't know. It's like the joke does get twisted up. I mean. It is one single joke, but at the same time, there's these sort of random other jokes around that joke. It's it's a joke sausage wrapped in joke bacon, and I like that about it.
It is that. It is that.
It's delicious.
It's so good.
It is a joke. So, yeah, and there's many other.
You get them on the street after you leave the bar at 2 a.m. Those danger dogs on the corner.
Yeah, it gives you. There's room. There's enough sausage in the middle there to wrap
that you can wrap
juicy,
some extra jokes around.
Juicy,
and
funny
it does
around
start
there.
out in the pub. You're not wrong.
Yeah. There's even that card in the beginning which says this is over a hole. That's nice. Way to set
what the
the
hell
setting.
was that about?
That was cool.
That was really weird, right? And
what does it say? It says this is a sign covering a hole or something?
The sign covers a hole.
Yeah, which was kind of funny.
What did that thing mean?
I think that was the funniest moment of the whole thing, to tell you the truth.
Really?
Yeah.
In my mind, I was like, what does that have to do with the card and the this and the that?
I think it's setting it up as a seedy pub. It's not like he's finding the card in a classy pub.
I see.
He's finding it in a crappy bar that doesn't even bother patching the holes. They just put a piece of paper over the front of it.
I guess my mind just immediately went to glory hole though is the problem.
Me too.
I was really confused.
Absolutely.
I'm not confused.
Me too.
Glory of God.
I like.
I thought for sure.
That's what they mean. That's what they mean. The glory of God.
Is that, man? That's actually kind of genius.
The
if that's
glory-
the glory hole.
That
of
is
God.
an
That's what it
entirely
was.
different short
That
film.
was the glory hole of God.
When I came to LA,
That's why he left
that was
his
my
number.
first short film.
The glory hole
of
of God.
God.
Yeah, that's why. Now we have an explanation to why God left his number in there. Because
Exactly.
he wants to do more glory holes.
I
Exactly.
did want a backstory for that, so I feel much better.
That we provided you with one.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about that.
it's
I
good.
kind of
Glory
want
hole
to
of God.
see that short film.
The other.
The prequel for this.
I think that the film you guys are talking about is way more interesting. I think, I do think that this film was a really good idea. Mm-hmm. I just felt like it was underdeveloped. And I don't really necessarily think it was underdeveloped from a writing standpoint. I think it was underdeveloped from a performance standpoint. I just felt like there were too many opportunities that the actor missed. I'm blanking right now on any specific moment, but it just felt like there were too many times when there were like the thing where he says where God says, "I'm God, not Google." In context, it's a great joke, right? But the actor didn't really respond to it at all, right? It was just okay, next, right? Mm-hmm. You told that joke, let's get to the next one. And it just felt like there were too many missed opportunities. But great idea. And this movie is still way more interesting.
But what could have been the not to in any way take away from what you're saying, but what could he have done with the not God?
I'm not sure, but I mean that's what a really good actor does. Is
you're just saying his emotional
there's
connection
some sort
to
of
that.
response in the moment,
Right,
rather than the guy whose eyes are kind of glazed over. Okay, and what's my next line?
Right.
Then again, it's a guy who finds a card in a bathroom and goes, yeah, that's probably actually God.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to be that level of, if you're going to have that level of faith and you're talking to someone you think is God, wouldn't you be kind of like, well, maybe I shouldn't laugh? Like, I should take this seriously, right? Like,
well, no, it's not. It's not that he should have any specific reaction.
He should just have.
He should have some reaction.
A reaction,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, the notion.
Because that's a dickish thing to say.
It's kind of a dickish
Like,
thing
I'm
to
not.
say.
I'm God, not Google.
But not only is it a dickish thing to say, but
God's a
it's loaded in so many different ways. It's loaded in this. Like, if you're a religious person, right? Then it's loaded from the standpoint of, really? Google knows more than God does, right?
Yeah.
And even if you're not a religious person, it's a funny idea that there's this entity that we've created that is so powerful that it even knows more than God does, right? Which makes it a very, very timely joke.
Yeah.
But anything, right?
Yeah,
And
I get what you're saying.
He just didn't respond. And that's just the most obvious example, I think. And so that's why it fell flat a little bit for me. But again, to reiterate, I do think that the idea behind it is really good.
Let's not nitpick this one too much. It's 2.5 minutes long. We've already talked more.
I thought that was the name of the show, Nitpick.
Nitpicking on
Nitpicking
shorts.
on shorts.
Where Kevin explains the jokes of every short film
There you
to us. It's very timely.
That's my
Google
role.
references are in.
Yeah. Google
We were talking about our roles earlier, right? So my role is to explain every single joke.
if you're going to do that, I'm going to insist on old age makeup.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
Okay, I'm not going to do that.
All right, then.
Anyway, so this guy, Tadas Vidmantas, is a very clever director. He has some other short films that are really funny, also kind of single punchline jokes. So check out his work on YouTube. I would highly recommend them. Moving on to a longer short film, Myrna the Monster is up next. It's by writer-director Ian Samuels, and it's voiced by Kathleen Hanna, who is the lead singer of Le Tigre and Bikini Kill. She's sort of like a feminist icon. And it's produced by Nonetheless Productions, which is Ian Samuels' production company. It's a hybrid animation live-action film about an alien from the moon who's having trouble fitting in Los Angeles. And as is very obvious in the movie, it's an allegory for a fish out of water living in LA, which all of us probably did at one point or another. I never really fall for these fish out of water things, maybe just because I'm like the master of my domain all the time. But maybe you losers have a different opinion.
Well, this was my choice. So, this film did premiere at Sundance this year, and it also screened at South by Southwest,
which means he's right.
which means it. So when it screens at two major film festivals, that means it's a very popular film.
Especially two major film festivals in the same country.
Exactly.
Like if it was at Sundance and then Toronto, okay, or Sundance and I don't know, like Clermont-Ferrand, which is the big one in France, like that, okay, but to be in Sundance and South by Southwest or Sundance and Tribeca, like that's pretty unusual.
Yeah, because normally film festivals only like to have world premieres. The bigger ones only like to have world premieres of short films at their festivals.
Or at least the premiere in their country.
The fact that South by Southwest was willing to take second fiddle to Sundance for this film really kind of speaks highly of it, just to explain that. Anyway, continue.
Well, no, I was just going to say, that I think there is a similar thread to Maria's pick in that there's the basic core concept of this is very obvious. It is very obviously a fish out of water. All of the metaphors are so obvious to the point of almost not being metaphors. But I felt like for me, the filmmakers knew that and they had fun with it. They just said, okay, we kind of understand that the story is kind of typical, so let's just make a character within that story to express the ideas, the thematic ideas that we want to express, that's so quirky and fun and lovable and empathetic that we can, we'll get away with the fact that the story is kind of well-trodden ground already.
And I think they actually, as far as the filmmaking goes, I think they really push it too. You know what I mean? Because they mix animation with live action, with puppetry. It's like a lot of different things going on at once. And it's interesting. Like I think that the tones between the live action stuff, the live action puppetry stuff, and the animation stuff are kind of very different. You know what I mean? Like there's something really, and I think it's very sad.
Yeah.
You know, and especially the animation sequences, they're very, very.
They're pretty dark.
Horrible in a way. You know what I mean? I mean, like it's Myrna doesn't arrive in LA because she's having she's got a dream to be an actress. You know what I mean?
Right.
She ends up here because she's kidnapped by astronauts. Right. Which is that's fucking intense. You know.
That is pretty.
I mean, astronauts are the worst, as we all know.
Kidnapping.
They're always just kidnapping stuff and just. They're terrible.
So
but I will say, I think you're absolutely correct. The production value of this is very, very high.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like the story, the production, it's very well put together.
Well, it
And
has some kind of MTV either money or production team behind it, which is sort of unclear because it hasn't come out yet. It hasn't fully been released yet, but there is a whole MTV angle. I think it's getting released on MTV either as a short or a part of a series. I'm not quite sure. So that, I think, does explain the high production values to some degree.
Very possible.
Maria, what do you think? As our female voice here, this was very much about kind of a female experience of Fish Out of Water. What did you think?
I didn't really relate to it at all. There was nothing. I'm not an alien who runs around in a wig. I do run around in wigs. I take that back.
Was that the kind of reaction you wanted when you said the Google thing?
I actually had a lot of the same feelings about yours that you had about mine. I don't mind that it's a one punchline story, but I think that it took way too long to get there. Mine is 2 minutes long. I'm willing to lose 2 minutes to a one punchline story, but that's like half an hour long.
Yeah, it's like 14 minutes long. But to stick with our hot dog reference, which in this film
there was a hot dog reference?
Yes,
the hot dog with the bacon wrapped around it.
Oh, right.
Which is one contribution to mankind tonight.
Which is particularly relevant for this film because it has a large male sausage full frontal nudity scene in it. What I didn't like the sausage very much. The sausage was really derivative sausage.
No, wait, are you talking about the story or the penis?
Hold on. Okay. I definitely loved the penis sausage.
Okay, good.
But I'm saying that the sausage of the narrative seemed extremely derivative to me. But the bacon wrapped around the sausage in this was really good. There was great little moments of really good writing, really good humor. I love the dancing scene, the dancing scene with the top. I think I learned how to dance a little bit, in that scene.
That was amazing.
And then the little LA nuggets about the people with the signs and the talk about with her and her friend on the beach. I thought that was just. I really liked those little writing things, although I found the larger narrative to be derivative.
Yeah, you really shop at Ross moment was hysterical. I mean, and especially if you come from I come from a very definitively, sort of middle class background, and so everyone I grew up with shops at Ross, and then you get here and I get the joke. I really do, right? Because it is something that someone who's still sort of an alien here would only do, right?
You think only aliens shop at Ross in LA? I would totally go to Ross.
That is a hell of a sci-fi show.
Fucking that's a great idea.
There you go.
They're aliens because they shop at Ross.
But I guess my point is that there is this perception of certain things that people would never do because they're so image conscious.
Yeah.
And
Kevin explaining
they nailed it.
Explaining the jokes.
I'm explaining the joke.
But it makes sense because Myrna is desperate, right? That's the idea. Myrna is desperate, and she evokes the desperation that is Los Angeles. And even if someone from here, I get that. There is a sense of desperation in this city. And that's, I think, what's so sad about her. She feels I'm oh, you're never going to get what you want.
But then
just
she finds belonging in the end. It's just the same. I don't know. It just felt very derivative to me. Anyway, okay. Enough time on Myrna. Moving on.
Twee is a good word.
The word of the night.
God View. My Pic. Yeah, it's written and directed by Billy Lumbee, and it's starring Cornell John as the protagonist/antagonist. And it's produced by Dazed and Confused magazine. I'm not quite sure what their involvement was, but it's clearly some sort of, they've licensed it or they paid for it. I don't know what the deal is. This guy, Billy Lumbee, is from London. I saw online that he used to assist for Harmony Korine, so that's big for me, as we've talked about on the show before. I'm a huge Harmony Korine fan. And it's a film shot from above, and it follows the perspective of a mentally unwell Londoner doomed towards violence. And what I was really excited about was that it reminded me of another favorite director of mine's film, Enter the Void.
Oh.
Gaspar Noé,
Yeah.
who is one of my favorites of all time. So what did you guys, I mean, it's definitely a novelty film, right? Because it's about this sort of interesting perspective, which is like a God view.
Yeah.
So what did you think? Did it have an impact on you?
Yeah,
Phinny?
I mean, I like it's weird, you know, it's clearly a camera technique, and I don't know how it works. And I have to say that, like, I am always fascinated by something that just feels weird. And that felt weird in a way, because it didn't, I mean, I don't know if you guys felt this, but I felt like the camera really moved with him, almost as if it were attached to him.
Well, it actually was attached to him. So they built, they built a really heavy rig that he put on him. So he was literally wearing the camera on his shoulders. And the guy said, like, they started out experimenting with small things, and then they ended up building an extremely complex rig that was, like, really heavy. And he was like, thank God we picked a strong actor, because he had to, like, move around.
Yeah, he had to be a bulky guy to move around with that. Okay, so so you felt the weight of this man in a weird way because you felt his body move with you. And, film pushes forward in different ways. But one of them is always on a technical level. You know what I mean? Like, when you get something new, a new toy, and you play with it, that moves the art forward. You know what I mean? Like when Kubrick is doing all the shit that he does in so many of his movies, like when he's using the Steadicam in one movie, or when he's using those super low light lenses in Barry Lyndon, those things give you opportunities that, like, create fresh ground. Right? And I think that really did that. And it gave you a feeling of this guy. And it oddly made me think about, like, Legend of Zelda, because we're watching it from above. So it's like those old 8-bit, or not even 8-bit, whatever they are, games where you're looking down on the character and you're waiting for them to interact with whomever, and often do violence to those people.
Yeah, or the original Grand Theft Auto, where you were sort of right above them. That's sort of what it reminded
that's probably
me.
See, I wonder if I might have enjoyed it more if I was holding a controller at the time while watching it.
I always just hold the controller when I watch things.
Do you? That's I mean, I'm not kidding. Sucker Punch is a much better movie if you're holding a controller.
Interesting.
Wow, okay.
Just saying.
So you weren't a fan?
I really liked the technical aspect. It really did remind me of Enter the Void as well. But I felt like I want to see what somebody else does with that that view, that perspective. The story was just like, okay, there was a guy and he walked around a lot, and then violence happened.
Yeah. I think the theme of this show is all these movies we've picked so far are kind of one-trick ponies, and this one-trick pony was technical, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I made the mistake, and I very rarely do this, but for whatever reason, it was in front of me, and so I glanced at it, of reading the description before I watched the movie, and I never like to do that. I hate it.
Yeah.
And it ruined it for me on two levels. Number one, because the description talked about how it was an experiment with this new camera, with this new equipment.
Right.
And it also talked about, the character and what was going on with him. And so it created certain expectations for me in terms of story that were not fulfilled at all. Because if I hadn't read the description, I wouldn't have known that this guy had just lost his wife and kid or whatever, and that he was really down. He was just, like Maria said, he's just some dude walking around.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't known those two things, I probably, except for one moment in the film, I would have been like, oh, this is kind of cool. Right.
And you wouldn't have noticed. So you're saying you would not have picked up on that this was clearly his ex-wife at his daughter's birthday?
Not until, because that doesn't happen until very late. Like, the movie, it's mostly just about him walking around the streets of, South London?
But I'm saying, Kevin, you didn't, if you hadn't have read it, you think you wouldn't have known that?
No.
See, I didn't read the description before watching it, and I did know that. I could tell that that's what was meant to be told, that he arrives at his his ex-wife's birthday party and bad stuff happens.
But it's,
you know, I got
it's
that.
very,
Not at all.
very told and not shown because you have other characters being like, hey man, it's your girl's birthday and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like that's how
See,
you find that
I don't
out.
even remember hearing that.
Yeah, I didn't hear that at all. I just saw him mess around with those guys, and
That's when that happens.
yeah, that totally makes sense. I just was sort of, it was more like I was just watching the image. You know what I mean? Like
And
I
I
wasn't
think-
thinking about the words at all.
I think the other thing is so much of people's emotions are in their body language as we're used to seeing it. So it's really hard to get any sense of how anyone was feeling when all you can see is the top of their heads.
And you can't see their faces. Well, actually, the director said that was kind of that was part of his goal, which was to have expression be not facial, you know,
Right.
and have it kind of be from the ground
Now-
up. And there are moments, there are brief moments where you do see his face that make it clear that he's crazy. Yeah.
There's one moment that is not from above, and there's no cinematic or story reason for it. There's a close-up, you don't see his whole face, you just see his mouth and about up to here, and that's the only shot, at least that I remember.
Yeah, there was only one.
I
shot.
think it's saying that he's crazy. You know, it's saying that he's not just, it's not just that he's angry.
Because he's talking to himself. I
Well,
talk
no.
to myself all the time.
Exactly, and maybe you're just angry. Whereas that facial shot, it tells you that he's actually like kind of lost. He's like lost it, you know?
Maybe, I don't know. I think that's a justification after the fact.
Yeah.
I think if I hadn't known about the fact that this was essentially an experiment ahead of time, I would have been like, oh, what a neat idea for a little film, right?
Yeah.
But knowing that that's why they did it sort of ruined it for me.
It was cool to see like the patterns of the street though, as he like walked through the street. You know, like it was just really interesting to see that view.
I liked it because I felt like I was kind of like being fucked with a little bit. You know what I mean? And I guess I always liked that for whatever reason. You know, like there's a certain level of being fucked with, and I'm like, okay, it's boring. But like if you just ride that line, it's kind of interesting in its own way. And it sort of felt a little bit slow film or slow cinema or whatever they call that. Like it was so like that, but like shit actually still happens.
Yeah.
You know, where they sort of let you just view it. And I think it's interesting that you're talking about, both you talked about the angle from above and sort of being like not letting you in. And I think in a weird way that I liked the distancing effect of that and of not knowing what's going on.
And I think like he said, that will be used. I think that
Maybe
somebody will
better.
pick up that
Or use it
rig
particularly in that way.
and use it in a cool way. Like I could totally see that working in a war film in some way, like seeing the ground around you.
I'd like
you know?
to see it worked into the narrative in some way.
Right.
Where that's
where there's something
explained why
from
you're
there or
looking
something.
at that
Well,
angle.
he actually in the end though, right? He looks up and he says, "Shh." Remember after the act? So I think maybe that's
Yeah,
either
but
him
that's-
talking to God.
Come on.
But again, I want it built into the narrative. So like this is a specific point of view.
Yeah, well, then that's Enter the
Every
Void.
single problem
Right,
that,
and
that
I
we've
love
had
that,
with
Yeah.
but this I don't.
every single problem that we've had with it actually would have been addressed if he had done that action earlier in the story for a motivated reason.
That's actually a good point.
You
I
know?
think that actually is true.
Because then
If
we
he'd
would have been
said
able to
like,
see their
I'm crazy and
faces.
I think God's looking at me all the time. It would have been cool to maybe use it as like he thinks he has to do this for like a religious, righteous reason. You know,
Or
so like
something,
God
I
is
mean-
with him the whole time. Yeah, that's a good idea.
You know.
Anyway, all right, we're moving on. Last film, Whatever Linda. It's actually not a film. It is a Canadian web series. It's created and written by Hannah Cheeseman and Julian Dezati, directed by Matt Eastman and starring Hannah Cheeseman as the main character. It's about a down-on-her-luck woman in New York City who gets a job as an assistant for a wealthy financier, sort of in the vein of Bernie Madoff, and it ends up being her as the secretary who starts the Ponzi scheme. Now, since we only review short-form things here, we're sort of limited to the pilot.
Right, yeah.
We can talk about the series as a whole, but Phinny, this was your choice, so tell us why you chose this one.
You know, I almost chose Godview, but I guess what I was interested in is just like the new venture of the web series. You know what I mean? And
How did you find it? How did you find
I
this?
don't remember. You know what it was? It was like a few weeks ago. I was like, "What's a good web series?" And then like that came up in 3 others. You know,
You literally Googled what's a good web series?
Yes, I did.
That's awesome.
I called God, and he was like, "I'm not Google, fucker." Like, okay, all right, I'll just use Google. So I Googled like what's a good web series, and a few came up, and I'd been watching High Maintenance already because somebody had recommended it to me before HBO picked it up.
Yeah.
And so I ended up checking it out, and I just liked the sort of like indie feeling spirit of it, but it still had production value.
Yes.
You know, and it's dealing with like a lot of the things that I'm always dealing with because I can't remember what I am from your intro, but like I'm also a TV writer. So you know, being a TV writer, like you're always dealing with like, well, what is the right way to approach like long form storytelling, and you know, and how does it not become just like boring plot machinations, and just something being a different length is useful. And I liked their approach. I thought that I thought that the creators had a great way of dealing with plot, like getting the story moving without it being clunky in a way. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a good lead-in. There's a very good lead-in where you start in the future and then you get the
and
rewind.
you jump back.
Yeah, I thought that was a good lead-in. Maria, what did you think?
I actually was really excited by it. I'm always a huge fan of when somebody says, oh yeah, we're going to set something in the past and it actually looks like the past.
But I didn't understand that at all. Why is this 1970? If this is Bernie Madoff, why are we in the 70s? I didn't even know we were in the 70s until I read it.
Oh, you couldn't tell by the clothing, really? Like, people don't dress like that as a general rule.
That's a 1970s drag queen if ever I've seen one.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I thought that was like, oh, that's super like contemporary. Why
I would
is it the
assume
70s?
because it's really hard to get away with stuff now because Google exists. Because
Back to
Google is
Google
gone.
again.
God.
Back to
Yeah.
Google.
Back to Google.
God, Google
Fucking
themes.
Google.
No, but why set it in the 70s?
I don't know, but the thing is, the reason I don't care about that is because this is a web series, right? And they have no obligation whatsoever to explain everything in the pilot, right?
Right.
If they explained everything in the pilot of Leftovers, I would have stopped watching Leftovers, right? And it would be far less interesting. Part of the fun of a series is being led on and finding things out as you go along.
Yeah.
So hopefully at some point it'll become apparent, but if it doesn't, I don't know if it's the hugest deal in the world.
See, I got to be honest. This was my least favorite of the choices, and it was partially because it seemed like there was these arbitrary things in it, like it being in 1970. Why set it in New York City when it's clearly not shot in New York City? Why the New York accents? I mean, you're from that side of the country. They were just patently horrible.
No, the accents didn't bother me at all, and the reason they didn't bother me is because New York is very similar to Los Angeles. There are actually more people who moved there
But
than
they
who
were
born
trying
there.
to talk in New York accents.
And that I did not pick up on that at all. It sounded pretty standard American English to me.
Oh, no way.
And
You gotta watch
They're
it
like
again.
the super, right? Who's kind of yelling
Yeah.
from off screen.
oh well, maybe the super, but I mean, it's a character off screen.
Yeah,
I was like, there's a voice.
I was in the same place.
Yeah,
with that.
I mean, I don't make any judgments whatsoever about who he or she is supposed to be because I can't see him. So it's just a voice, and I take the voice for whatever it might or might not be.
Okay, so let me
And I
give
just
you
sort
one
of-
other one. I did 2 questions, and these are for you, Phinny.
Sure.
How can a secretary do a Ponzi scheme?
Well, I don't know. I haven't watched all of them yet.
Okay.
I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm kind of curious to see where it goes.
To see how
in
that can
3
possibly
months,
happen.
like,
All right,
ha-
that's fair. That's
you know.
fair because that is intriguing. How can that possibly happen?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Secretaries do have a lot of access to a lot of information.
But they can't exit. I mean, the nature of a Ponzi scheme is not really something a secretary can execute, just in the nature of it.
Well, let's see. That's
maybe
going
they
to be
can.
the
Okay,
fun
you're
of the
right. No,
series.
you're absolutely right.
And I have to say, I do want to say this. The first reaction that I had to this was, I'm just so happy to see yet another really high quality, like really high production value web series.
Yeah.
Right? Every time I see one of those, I'm like, thank God and thank you to the filmmakers. So I almost like that. Any problems I may or may not have had with the story or the execution of the acting or anything like that just kind of went out the window because it was just it's put together by people who are clearly professionals, who care what they're doing, who know how to tell stories, and who are all good. They're all at the base. At the base, they're all very competent professionals.
Yeah, the competent. I think that's a.
But at the base,
competent.
right? I think there are aspects of it that are actually pretty, that go beyond that for sure. And I did like the story too. I mean, I think one of the other things that's great about episodics, right, is that the cliffhanger aspect of it, I think, allows you to focus more on telling stories about real people, because you don't have to worry so much about, like, what's that really unique thing? Like, movies always have to have that conceit, right? That thing we haven't quite seen before. Movies are, in that sense, are so concept driven, right?
Yeah.
That you see lots of movies that are not really all that well written, but they have a great concept, and they need to do that because it's a one-time experience, right?
Or these can be about characters.
Yeah,
is
these
what
can
you're
be
saying.
about
Yes.
characters, because you don't have the same need for that that wholly unique conceit to keep you coming back, as long as you care enough about the characters and there's a cliffhanger and you want to see what happens next and you want to find out how a secretary could possibly pull this off and why it's set in New York and why it's set in 1978 and all those things.
You know, I only saw one episode, so it's hard to give it. That's why, you know, it's hard to do it. How can someone get an apartment without putting down their first and last month's rent?
That's probably why it's set in 1978. Seriously, when I first moved to New York, the rules about all of that were much less stringent. It's not like it was today. You could just move in somewhere and be like, I owe you. The first place I lived in New York, I don't think that they forced me to put anything down at first, right? By the end of the week, I owed them money.
Anyway, okay. Whatever, Linda. 3 against 1. I'm the odd man out on this one. That's about it. I guess I want to give Phinny a chance to talk about any projects you're doing before we get out of here.
I have nothing.
I am not doing anything.
No, actually, really, honestly, I've got like several things going on but nothing fully in fruition. The main thing that I'm working on right now is I'm working on a graphic novel that will appear on an app, which is kind of crazy. And it's about the 442nd, what is the word, combat team during the Second World War, which is made up of all Japanese American soldiers, many of whom were in internment camps. My dad was in an internment camp. But he was not old enough to be a soldier. He was 2. These men went and fought on the European front, and they still to this day are the most awarded unit for their size and the duration that they fought.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so it's this kind of crazy thing.
Didn't you just produce something too, though?
You mean no, not really. I mean, I wrote a pilot about an internment camp because I'm just Mr. Internment Camp, which is fucking fun, right? Hey,
really
let's visit Phinny and the internment. Japanese Americans, which most people don't even know about. But yeah, I wrote sort of a fucked up family drama set within one.
Do you know that Japanese Americans got reparations?
Yeah, my dad got them.
Yeah. They got like 30 grand each.
He was like 40
grand each.
No, 25, I want to say.
Yeah.
26, something like that. He got them in
He got gypped, it sounds like.
Well, it's true. I mean, they lost the farm, and you didn't get paid for anybody who happened to be dead at that time. So, like, if you were dead, they're like I'm not going to give your heirs any money. But I remember him getting the payment in like the early 90s, because I think it was, who was responsible for that? I don't remember which president, but anyway, yeah. Interesting. Interesting
stuff. All right, that's all we have for Short on Shorts episode number 2. Tune in 2 weeks from today for another episode with another 4 hosts and another 4 films. Have a good one.
Take care, guys.